Well, hey, everybody, West McDonald here, and I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of TigerTube. And if you can't see us, you can only hear us. That means you're listening on Tigerpaw Radio, so thank you very much for that. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button down below so you never miss another important piece of learning content designed to help you better your business so you can sleep better at night. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce the topic today, and what a perfect day to use this, the interview that we have with our guest today, because it is Reman Day. And from what I understand, it is the 6th National Reman Day, and the perfect day to talk about driving sustainability, both with us as dealers, our dealer community, and with our customers. So maybe what I'll do is I'll get our guests to introduce themselves. And Tricia Judge, maybe I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me here, West. Yes, it is Reman Day, and I have the state of Illinois proclaiming it's Reman Day.
Yeah.
I have got the mayor of Las Vegas proclaiming it's Reman Day. I even have the mayor of North Las Vegas proclaiming it's Reman Day. Very proud of Reman Day. I am Tricia Judge, the executive director of the International Imaging Technology Council. We are the organization that represents imaging supplies dealers, particularly those that sell remanufactured toner and inkjet cartridges or do the remanufacturing themselves. I was the initial executive director. I'm the only one that's held this position, and I've held it for about going on 25 years. So I'm not only, a long-term advocate of Reman, I'm also old. I'm an attorney. I have had 35 years of experience in the law, and I love advocating for the remanufacturing community. I'm also part of the Remanufacturing Association Alliance, so I interface regularly with everything from, John Deere and Caterpillar tractor remanufacturers on down to microprocessing remanufacturing. So I'm looking forward to today because I have lots of thoughts.
Yeah. And I've known you probably for close to 20 years now.
Yes.
And, you've been absolutely instrumental in making sure that dealers have choice when it comes to how they help their customers. And obviously today with sustainability, but, for cost, for, just basically to have choice, right? So thank you for all that you continue to do. And Eric Crump, maybe I'll get you to introduce yourself next.
Sure. Thanks, Wes. Thanks for having me as well. I'm excited to be here. My name's Eric Crump, and I work for Ringdale, the company that brings you Follow Me Printing. Follow Me Printing, a big part of who we are is more sustainable printing. A lot of times people think of green footprints. Tricia, I have... So talk about, taking a look at your footprint and how printing's happening. But I have a long life in the managed print services industry, working with Lexmark at the beginning, and Lexmark at the very heart of their managed print services offering was sustainability, and how do we look at that, not just from a cost perspective, but from an environmental perspective. And so that was one of the things when I was working in Europe, we took hold of from a managed print services initiative. So I learned a lot from working in Europe and being in a more aggressive marketplace as far as being focused on sustainability. And so fast forward to today and continuing to focus on that. Things are gotten more progressive, and our world that we're in today are looking at ways to be more sustainable from a business practice. So looking forward to today's discussion.
Well, that's great, Eric, and happy Reman Day, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
And Shneour Heintz, if you could introduce yourself for our audience.
Hi, West. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. I work for a town business center. We're a company that buys surplus copiers across the United States. We focus mainly on copiers that are not needed anymore, or not possible to be reused in the US, and we resell them to third world countries overseas where they get a new life. We also have a small amount of lightly used copiers that we keep in the US and that are being resold to dealers and reused as well. Our whole company essentially focuses on stuff that can't be used anymore. So this is a great topic for me as well. And thank you so much for having me.
Well, absolutely, Shneour, and thank you very much for what you're doing on that part as well, right? And I know that we'd have to be sleeping under rocks if we haven't been paying attention, to the news, right? That it gets harder and harder every year to meet sort of our commitments to be able to keep global warming down below 1.5 degrees. And anything that we can do and can contribute to that sustainability effort. I know that companies are very interested in making sure that they contribute and track on those, right? So one of the things, let's just talk to each of you, and maybe Eric, I'll get you to start, right? But in your respective field, what are some of the things that Ringdale is doing to contribute to the 3 R's: reuse, reduce, and recycle? And I'm sure I said them in the wrong order, but I'm old enough to remember when that was actually taught in grade school.
Well, we're looking at efficient use of printers and copiers, and that's where most of the activity around sustainability is important, is the actual usage. And as devices are lasting longer and longer, it's becoming more and more important during that phase. And so at Ringdale, what we have is we provide enterprise grade software that can track the usage, whether that's print, scan, copy usage, and being able to collect that information on a user-based level, where a user could actually see what their individual impact is for printing from an environmental standpoint, whether they're printing, copying, scanning, and understanding what's going on personally, but also for the whole company or for a department. And so that's really important to be able to kind of communicate what's the impact on the company. Most employees don't care about how much it costs to print. Really, they just see it as cost of doing business. They just expect that to be a utility that's available to them. But once you provide, information to them that's personal to them on what their impact is and how they are helping change, the environment, it's a different kind of engagement. People really do pay attention. People are, more considerate of, printing documents maybe they don't need to print, or instead of making a copy, scan it in and as an email to somebody else, and all that's trackable, and you can really show, what that impact is that way. So we've been focusing that on large enterprise organizations and government organizations that have reduction in print as a key performance indicator of the organization. So, banking, that's been in annual reports for years, saying, how is that reduction and how do we become more electronic? And so we are part of that data collection and tracking, and then being able to provide that reporting so that business decision makers can make the right decisions for their paper and print environment.
Yeah, in my days as a managed print specialist, one of the things that I always do when I was presenting a new opportunity for customers was to show them what the impact would be on their sustainability efforts, right? To show them how many trees were saved, how much carbon they could reduce. Water impact is another big one that people don't often think about, how much water is used in a lot of these processes of building new things. And it was always shockingly impactful, even for top executives sitting around that table. I could see them really start to take notes around those things, because obviously they're thinking, for our customers, we can show this in our, reporting, we can actually, make a difference. And I think even for me personally, when I am given some of the statistics around some of my own activities and what some of those impacts are, they do motivate me far more than, financial dollars, right? And Tricia, maybe I can get you to move into the next part, from a legal perspective, right? Because what you've been doing for the past 20 or so years, 25 years, has really been to make sure, and this is not, I'm not knocking the OEMs here, right? But to make sure that a lot of the things that were traditionally just thrown away do get reused and do find new life and give dealers new opportunities to be able to help their customers. So maybe you can talk about that in a perspective of sustainability.
Sure. 375 million printer cartridges are thrown away every year. That's over 1 million a day. That's crazy. I mean, yes, they're small. They're, you don't think that this little guy is going to take up, a whole lot of space, but 375 million of them. Yeah, that takes up some space. And they are made of styrene, industrial grade plastic that will not decompose for more than 1,000 years. So people, and especially the toner cartridges, they're bigger. So as you well know, so the the impact, the environmental impact of tossing these is huge, and the government gets it. So yes, we have problems on two fronts. First of all, we are experiencing a reman renaissance. I mean, we are being embraced wholeheartedly by institutional buyers who are concerned about sustainability, and state and government officials. Recently, well, actually 2021, the city of Los Angeles, this is the resolution, I know you can't see it, passed a resolution banning the importation of single-use plastic cartridges. Now, we have two fronts that we're fighting on. One, yes, is the OEMs. They want you to buy their new cartridges. And of course, they do nasty things like putting in firmware updates that shut down the printer if you're using anything but their cartridges. But we're working on that. And if we want to address it more, I can. But the really nasty front is with these Chinese clone cartridges that they're new built, they're being sold on eBay and Amazon as remanufactured when they are not. And they are destroying, not just are they destroying the marketplace for reman on the front end of the sales at the retail level, but their crappy empties are destroying our core stream. So the remanufacturers who are collecting these empties are burdened with discarding these cartridges that are of such questionable quality and intellectual property issues that they can't remanufacture them. And China doesn't take them back. So we're stuck with them. So the government is very aware of this issue. I've been out there hoofing it. New York Congressman Joe Morelli, who has been our advocate for decades, had me in DC this past summer. He wrote a letter, and so did 52 other congressmen, to the General Services Administration, which is the largest government, the largest consumer, period, in the world, and said, hey, we got to stop buying this stuff. And so they're considering a ban on single-use plastic cartridges too. So we have got a real movement going. We've got the ears of a lot of important people. You cannot sell anything but remanufactured cartridges to the U.S. Department of Energy, the state of Connecticut, the state of Massachusetts, Cook County. I mean, we are racking up the number of consumers. Texas Department of Transportation. If you don't, so if you are a dealer and you haven't embraced selling reman, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. And if you partner with the right remanufacturer, they'll provide you, like Clover provides you with sustainability reports that you can share with your customers and show them just what their environmental impact is. I mean, that's just worth a fortune to me.
It is. I love Clover Imaging for, how they approach that. And my actual start in the office equipment channel was working for a remanufacturer. And that was back in the day working for Multi-Laser when they decided they were also going to get into the software game with a little company that soon became known as Print Fleet, right? So, it's so important. And the remanufacturing market has driven so much opportunity, not only for the dealers, but to your point on the sustainability side, I'm shocked by, the numbers that you talk about for the waste that gets thrown out. And for anybody that's watching or listening, if you happen to stumble upon this and you're a consumer buying cartridges, I'm not going to tell you whether to buy new or remanufactured, but please don't buy some of this crap that is coming from overseas that is new manufacture. That's an easy one, right? Because it is contributing to the problem. It's not helping in so many ways.
And Wes, there's one other thing that you need to be aware of when you're buying that crap. We did an in-depth investigation. We bought a bunch of these cartridges off of Amazon, shipped them to a lab in Atlanta that basically studied the plastic composition and found large percentages of deca-BDE, which is a flame retardant, and it's a known carcinogen. And remember, if it's a toner cartridge, that cartridge gets heated up in that machine to 180 degrees. So you've got carcinogenic material floating around in your office. That's not good. So I strongly urge for health and safety issues, for environmental issues, for just, good commercial choice issues, stay away from that crap.
Absolutely. And Shneour, I want you to contribute now. So like on the hardware side, as you mentioned, you are working to make sure that a lot of stuff can be shipped overseas to be repurposed in places where maybe they're not as concerned as we are with all the shiny new, buzzwords and, things that go on with those devices, as well as giving additional life to dealers here in North America, for devices that have plenty of life left in them and are feature rich enough for, some different workflows, right? So maybe you can talk a little bit about, how you see that from a sustainability perspective.
Yeah, so I think hardware wise, one of the bigger issues is that the older copiers are ending up in the landfill or not getting reused. In the United States and in a lot of Western countries, we like to, everything has to be new and flashy, like you said. Repairs are okay in the first few years, but afterwards, we like to get rid of it, myself included, and just replace it. And I think industry standard for copiers is about 5 years. And there's still a lot of life left in these, even if there is an older technology. So we have solutions, we sell these copiers overseas to third world countries. They replace it, they clean it, they bring up to code based at their country, and then it gets reused. And that's a great solution for making sure that this stuff doesn't end up in the landfill.
And I think that's one of the things. It's gathering the data on the usage of these machines to understand. I mean, there's a lot of machines that are sitting out there in offices that are just underused, right? And so it's just understanding, what's the best, placement or where to maybe it's out of your company, but it's really trying to optimize the fleet from that sustainable impact, and that's huge. But without the information, collecting information you don't know, that's where it's critical.
Yeah, and again, as an MPS specialist for many years, that's one of the reports that I would give to them as the overall utilization of their fleet, and they are often shocked and amazed, right? Saying, "Good grief, like we should be able to use that equipment for another 20 years." And it's like, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's you're absolutely not wrong, right? And that's part of it, I think, that with that information that you're talking about, with the work that Tricia is doing legally, trying to make sure that information is power, right? To make sure that people understand both what's happening with the toner they're putting in those machines, what kind of information about the utilization, and Shneour, to what you are doing to make sure that they actually get used in their lifespan to deliver more value while they still have lots of life left in them, right?
Correct.
And one of the things, and actually maybe I'll just put this one to you, Shneour, is can you describe a little bit of the process of what happens when these machines are reconditioned, and how do you think that helps, with sustainability?
Sure. So the machines are sourced across the United States, North America, really. We've even purchased in Mexico, Canada. They come to our facility. I would say it's different because we have two processes. 90% of the machines, as we discussed, go export, like to third world countries, and then a small percentage stays in-house. And those machines then end up staying in the United States and going to dealers. So for the majority of the machines, these are surplus machines. They're typically much older, and people in the US don't want them anymore. They're sent to distributors overseas. We personally don't remanufacture them just because labor in a lot of these third world countries is cheaper.
Yeah.
When they get to distributors, they typically replace them, bring them up to code based on the requirements for their country. And then they're sold to dealers within that country who then sell to end users. And the copiers are 100% reused. Which is the best form of recycling, is when it's actually 100% reused and not just the materials being reused. The small portion of machines of copiers that stay within the US, typically they're newer. They're part of the category that are 5 years or younger, so to speak. most companies would not get rid of a machine like that, but in rare occasions, it's bigger corporations, bigger contracts. A lot of times governments, they're getting rid of machines that are 1 year old, 2 year old, 3 years old, sometimes a few months old. Those machines can 100% be reused in the US. They typically require zero maintenance. They come in with low meters, so they have good mileage on them. All we do is we clean them and we test them and throw them back into the stream. And they can, again, 100% be reused within the United States and at a much cheaper alternative cost than buying brand new. So it makes people happy and it's good for the environment. It's a win all around.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of our purchasing policies are actually very wasteful, right? And I know specifically when you speak to government that oftentimes it's the same in Canada, believe me, and it's backwards. That if you figure out a way to reduce your budget, it's permanently reduced for the following year. So instead of finding other areas to use those dollars, it's taken away, right? So what they do is say, and I had an RFP early in my sales career. I'd saved a government organization who I will not name about $600,000 on what was supposed to be a $2 million opportunity, right? And they said, "Great, thank you very much. Now take that 600,000 and figure out what else you can do with it," right? And the reason was because they would lose the money, right? And so unfortunately, I think that with a lot of these devices that have so much life left in them, it is because of the fact that we have these buying cycles where they're literally forced into having to to do those kind of things, right? And Tricia, from a legal perspective, right? I know that when we talked about the copiers themselves actually being reused, remanufactured is kind of a it doesn't fully explain the story, right? Because you're actually reusing most of the components in that cartridge, right? So maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, your average toner cartridge, or inkjet cartridge, you have 90 to 95% reuse of the original piece. Most people don't know this, but everybody knows that there's automotive remanufacturing, but the average percentage of a car that actually gets remanufactured is under 5%.
Wow.
So that tells you something about the impact that cartridges can have above and beyond what even the automotive reuse. And you did get it right. It is reduce, reuse, recycle, but reuse is the highest form of recycling. And it's so much better to reuse the cartridge, reuse the copier, use Reman in MPS settings, rather than to, ship it back to Hewlett Packard where it's turned into a park bench or, melted down into a bollard or, whatever they do with them.
And Eric, the other way, and I'd say actually probably better even than reusing something is just not to do it at all, right? And one of the things when I was doing managed print assessments using your software and other software that does what yours does is to actually help people to get rid of waste altogether. And a lot of people don't realize, and for all of our viewers and listeners that are not in the office equipment channel, that maybe you're an MSP that's watching or a managed IT provider, or maybe just a customer, right? That one of the biggest impacts you can have is making sure that the document that you send to a device, if for some reason it has a mistake on page 3 and page 21, that you catch that before reprinting everything, right? Like there's just so many ways to, instead of sending the whole print job to the device again. And Eric, software like yours will actually help customers to think about that, right? To say, hey, look, you sent this version twice. Do you really need it? Right.
Sure. Exactly. And there's multiple ways you can do that. And that, depending on the kind of the customer behaviors, if it's a school or a government agency or a bank, you can kind of hold that print job. And whenever when you're ready to go print it, you can print it. And like Wes said, if you maybe sent 3 versions of it, you don't want the first or the second version, you want the third version. Or you can, we get a lot of emails. I get a lot of emails that are, have color that says, think twice before printing, for the environment. That's all in green, right? And so, by sending that over to a printer that's, using more color, more cost, and using more cartridges, right? it could be better to send it over to a monochrome device. And so by having those print workflows make a big difference on the impact of printing. So, reducing the waste that's not necessary. And then also looking at the behaviors of very large print jobs and making sure that maybe to stop them, because you don't really need those to print, because we've always made that mistake printing the 60-page print job when you only needed 3 slides.
That's right.
But definitely. And one of the behaviors we've also been trying to talk about is how can you move things electronically instead of printing them? So, we're in this digital transformation age. And so instead of making copies and handing out, 10 sets of copies to everybody, is instead just, either keep it electronic, or take a paper copy, make it electronic, and send it to everybody instead of making copies. So those are just easy things. But by looking at that data and the reporting, you can say, wow, where's all these copy volumes coming from? And could we do this in a smarter way? So
I love it.
Different ways.
And listen, in respect for your time and for that of our viewers and listeners, we're going to come to a close here on Reman Day. And just want to thank you all for all the efforts that you are doing and contributing to helping with sustainability in our industry. So for anyone that's watching, I'll make sure the contact information is included. And make sure also that you subscribe if you didn't do so at the beginning, and get lots more educational content like this to help you with your sustainability and business efforts. So until next time, everybody, keep learning.